Welcome back to Ocarina of Time 3D and the final dungeon for Child Link. Also, Mexi's favourite dungeon.
I love this dungeon, and I didn't even realize how much I loved it until I was taking notes for this part. And then I realized I kind of got a hard-on for this dungeon. It's absolutely fantastic. I mean, it's definitely one of the most memorable in the entire series. It's impossible to confuse it with any other dungeon.
Well, it's the only biological one in Ocarina, so I can see where you're coming from in that regard.
Oh, definitely. I mean, the floors and walls and ceilings look like the mucous membranes of intestine. They make a squishy noise every time you take a step. And there's puzzles that involve you striking the uvula to unlock a door.
That's a very unique puzzle piece for Zelda, I'll give you that.
I'm surprised striking it doesn't cause Jabu to throw you up.
A bit like if you shoot the lake in Resident Evil 4, Del Lago will come out and eat you. There should have been like a punishment for repeatedly striking the walls.
I mean, they make a noise when you strike it, so you'd think that eventually Jabu would be like, fuck this.
Speaking of, here's Ruto.
Oh, God. She got it changed in this version, too, because apparently, in the original, it's uncomfortable to have a fish-like girl thing that's not wearing clothes.
Yeah, and especially the adult version. In this one, they kind of, like, changed her, like, texture, so it looks like she's wearing, like, a scale dress.
Wow, there you have it. The Zora royalty falling down a hole.
Oh, Ruto. Do you want to explain a little bit about the escort side of Ruto?
Yeah, the main task of this dungeon is going to be escorting Princess Ruto. However, unlike other escort missions that were created at the time, and even those that followed, this mission actually seems to have had some thought put into it. She doesn't have a health bar, she can't die, and you don't have to worry about her having an AI that has a suicidal obligation to kill her every 5 seconds. Instead, she's more of a prop used for puzzle solving, which is very useful.
Yep, you can use her as a weight, you can use her as a projectile to hit switches. Oh, the Ruto is extremely versatile. Buy yours now. $99.99.99.
Call now and get a second one free! It's really weird, though, that despite her being a Zora and showing to swim later on in the game, she will disappear if she falls in deep water. So that's why you gotta throw her up on the ledge when you activate this switch.
To be fair, this is most likely poo gas water, so I can understand why anyone would disappear if thrown into it.
That means Link was swimming in poo gas water.
Well, don't feel bad for him. Feel bad for the cows in the Master Quest version that slowly digest. Do you want to explain a bit more about that shit?
Yeah, so in the Master Quest version, Jabu's belly received a very memorable alteration in the fact that the dungeon is covered in cows. Cows everywhere. There's cows in the ceiling, cows in the wall. There's a cow underwater slowly being digested. And you have to hit them with your slingshot to activate switches.
And speaking of switches, in Master Quest, this was the one where I noticed that Nintendo was trying to, like, dick around with the player, because instead of making the puzzles, you know, kind of linear, challenging but solvable, in that one they just kind of, like, subvert your expectations and hide switches behind walls and on ceilings where you wouldn't look, like, initially. So it's kind of like the Insomniac method of hiding what you need.
Oh, yeah, like putting gems and treasures right behind the start of a level.
Those fuckers.
Yeah, they do something similar to that, where you have to dive underwater, go into a underwater tunnel, and then pop up on the other side to find a cow. It's like, why would I even go diving in the poo gas water? Why, game?
Now, these tunnels especially benefit greatly from 3D's graphical update.
Definitely. You can actually see that they have the peristaltic movement. When I first played this dungeon, I was wondering, why am I moving backwards? Game, why are you being so weird?
And what Mexa means by that is if you stand still in those tunnels, you'll find yourself slowly moving.
An easy way to get rid of all these stingers is that if you throw a Deku Nut, they'll all pop out of the wall. And if you throw a second one, they'll all lay down on the ground stunned. And at that point, you can just run around in a circle, stabbing them all.
You know, ever since I found out that there's a glitch, and this is to do with the first dungeon's boss, Goma, where if you, like, stun him using a Deku Nut instead of the slingshot, you can actually freeze the game. I haven't used Deku Nut since, and this is going on, like, 10 years now.
Wow, you've had the game freeze? The only thing I've known about Deku Nuts is that they are extremely overpowered and extremely underused. So the item we get for this dungeon is the boomerang, which greatly utilizes the Z, now the L targeting system that was first introduced in the original Ocarina of Time. Originally, they were going to have an upside down triangle be used to determine which enemy Link was going to target, but the designers felt that this marker was too simple, so instead they wanted to replace it with a cute fairy girl, believing that it would fit the Zelda atmosphere. The N64 couldn't support animating an entire fairy, so they just made a ball of light with wings and called it the Fairy Navigation System, later renamed Navi.
Da 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 da.
And now you know.
And knowing is half the blah blah blah.
The internet knows what I'm talking about. Frankly, giving Link the fairy companion just reinforces the fact that he's based off Peter Pan.
Oh, here we go again.
Now, I'm not saying that Link and Peter Pan are one and the same, but come on. The design in their outfits is just too similar.
Well, he's only had a fairy for like 3 games. This, Majora, Phantom Hourglass, and maybe some others that I'm forgetting right now.
The cool thing about the map is that it shows that the first floor of this entire dungeon is actually shaped like a whale. You got the head, 2 fins, and a tail area. Just another cool part about this dungeon.
Makes sense, because it's not a man-made structure.
Another thing that adds to the atmosphere is the music. It's got this gurgling, bubbling noise in it. And it was later reused in Wind Waker during the scene when you talk to Jabu, the other giant fish, in a cave and he gives you Nehru's Pearl.
That's right, yeah.
Tom, I got a question. How is there light inside Jabu?
He's part whale, part disco fish.
That is a much more fabulous idea than mine. See, I assume that since this game is made in Japan, that Jabu is a radioactive fish and therefore has a glowing belly.
In Master Quest Final Mix version, instead of cows, it's just disco balls.
Oh my god, it'd be so cool to hit them with the slingshot, but then they'd shatter and you'd ruin the party inside the belly.
Oh my god, then glass would go into him, and I don't want to talk about this anymore.
This game just became much more violent, all thanks to disco. Jabu's belly is also the only child dungeon that cannot be completed by adult Link, and that is because you need the boomerang to kill the final boss.
Yeah, most of the enemies are only susceptible to the boomerang here, most notably the jellyfish, and there'll be one bitch of a jellyfish at the end of this dungeon, so...
I love the names of the jellyfish. The small ones are called Beery, and the bigger ones are called Berry.
Wait, the Game Grumps editor came from Jabu Jabu's belly?
That would explain a lot. I also love how in this update they gave the tentacle beasts, the first puzzle I guess of this dungeon, they gave them little spikes on the end to make them look like parasitic worms.
Oh my god, look at the walls.
They're pulsating. And then he just crumbles apart. Most of the enemies in this dungeon have such gross, weird death animations.
Are they supposed to remind me of tumors and whatnot? Because that's the vibe they're giving me.
They're all supposed to be parasites. Like, the king mentions that Jabu is green around the gills, and apparently he's infested with all these. And that's why I think they added those spike points, because that's what gut worms usually have to attach to their host.
Yeah, well, you know, if he didn't have such an insatiable appetite, he wouldn't have had this problem.
That's what he gets for eating cows, okay? Raw meat is known to carry worms.
True, true. Well, I suppose if the king actually got off his fat arse and moved out the way so people could go feed him, Jabu wouldn't have gotten sick.
Unfortunately, we got stuck in the middle of it and we fed him a fish. It wasn't enough.
He wanted a slice of that leg pie.
You so tasty. So, when you defeat a tentacle worm thing as a boss, it removes the worm in another location in the dungeon. Like, it's really complicated, but not.
Yes. It's stupid, but intelligent, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I do like how they make them look more worm-like, because when I was a kid, I just assumed that they were glowy tubes. I didn't know what I was killing. Now it makes sense.
So, like, when you kill one, it will remove one back in the main room. Like, the one we went down was covered to begin with, but once you take out all of them, fuck you, jellyfish, it will remove itself.
And that's the thing, the jellyfish give you electrical damage. Also, the bubbles in the original game, the Navi hint claim that they bounce your sword strike back at you, they don't actually do that. All they do is just pop in your face.
Pretty much.
I'm sorry, what the hell is that in the platform? I know that's not the Zora Sapphire. That thing is way too round and too flat to be the Zora Sapphire.
I miss the jaggy edginess of the N64.
It's totally the Zora Sapphire. You've ruined my childhood, Grizzo! Well, got the Zora Sapphire. Time to exit the dungeon. Good part, Tom. Let's get out of here.
Yep, see you all next time on the Ocarina of Time 3D playthrough. End part. Oh, son of a bitch.
It couldn't have been that easy, Tom, could it?
Nope.
Why is it never that easy?
And why is it always an octopus? Japan?
I blame 'em. Tentacles, octopus, girls getting eaten. It just screams Japan.
All it is really is a giant Octorok, and honestly this is probably my least favourite mini-boss in the game.
Yeah, Jabu's belly, while still being an amazing dungeon in terms of design, suffers from having the worst bosses in the game.
Do you want to explain how to beat this sucker?
Yeah, the fastest method, and the method that I use, is that I allow him to hit me, because when he hits you, he stops running in the direction that he is, and turns around and goes the opposite direction.
Okay.
So you let him hit you, and you get your boomerang ready, so that as soon as you get up, you throw it and you stun him. Once you stun him, he opens up this green circle on his butt, and at that point, I jump slash him with the Deku stick. You do that twice, and he's dead.
Yeah, I go for the old-fashioned route of trying to time, like, when I hit him in the bat. And I'm not very good at timing, as you all know by now, so yeah, this battle took longer than it should have done, really.
And yeah, my method does involve getting hit twice. You can also try and run halfway around the circle, so that when you hit him with the boomerang, you just quickly run over and slash his weak rear end. There's a lot of different ways to take care of this boss, but they're all really badly designed.
Yeah.
I love how they added these little hair-like silly on top of this platform.
Ugh, creepy.
Everything's so squishy and gross and gooey. I love it.
Okay, I can understand the cows, but what about the perfectly preserved, like, jars and whatnot? Not to mention fairies.
Magic.
Well, I suppose the Deku Tree had to fund, like, the food storage units of the Kokiri Forest somehow, capturing fairies, selling fairies on the black market.
Wow, the Kokiris are now terrible, horrible children people.
Well, he had sell them to, like, the Zoras, you know, to help feed their gigantic whalefish deity.
Also, when I first saw these platforms as a kid, because they were less square in the N64, I thought they were tongues. I assumed that whales have two tongues.
I thought they were jelly, personally.
So, doing all that has finally led to the conclusion of lowering a platform. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, that was the point of this whole dungeon, was to lower that platform.
Fuck you, jellyfish. Not so intimidating now, are you?
Boomerang, deadliest toy alive.
Hells yeah.
You can actually skip everything from getting the boomerang to lowering that platform by using a bomb to perform a mega flip. All it involves is you using the force of the explosion and combining that with a backflip to essentially doing a huge backflip over the gap and landing on that platform.
I like flipping, so mega flipping sounds right up my alley.
But unfortunately, that means you can't carry a box over there. Luckily, you can do a trick where if you backflip onto the button, and while midair, press Zelda's letter. Because they let you keep Zelda's letter. They don't let you keep that in the original game. If you activate Zelda's letter, as soon as you land on the switch, the cutscene for using her letter takes precedence over the button being pushed down. So you can then, the door stays open for longer than it's intended, so you can just walk into the door. Also in this room, there's a huge switch at the very top, the last of the uvula puzzles. I really wish this dungeon had more, like, biology-based puzzles. It would have been so good. But this one, you have to send your boomerang at an arc to the left or right in order to hit it. You can actually also hit it from the platform when you enter the room. All you have to do is aim up and then do a whole bunch of side jumps to bring the boomerang over to the switch.
Yeah, I imagine that would have been tougher in the original one, where thinking in 3D was more of a new idea. Nowadays, it's kind of commonplace, really.
And we've made it to the boss.
Oh boy, here comes Baronade.
Because when life gives you a boss full of berries, you make Baronade. Or a Jill sandwich, I'm not really sure about the saying.
Explain how this dick of a boss works, MBM.
With pleasure. This boss is multi-phased. The first step, you have to target the 3 tentacles that attach him to the roof using your boomerang. And unfortunately, the targeting seems slow in this game because in the original, you could just quickly target the next tentacle right after the other, but in this version, you have to wait a second after hitting one of the tentacles before you hit the next one.
And that's really what got me like hurt a lot in this. So you'll notice a lot of crossfades, like right there for example. I had no way to get out of the way of that in time.
Yep. But once you get all 3 down, he does send his Beeries out with Electrical Surge. The quickest way to get rid of them is to just throw a Deku Nut. In the original, it got rid of all of them in the room at once. In this version, I feel like the range of the Deku Nut was limited because I'll throw a Deku Nut and it only gets rid of about half of them. And then I have to throw a second one and that got rid of the remainder.
I wish I knew about that Deku Nut stuff, otherwise I would have used it here and it would have saved me a headache or two.
Yep. Once you get rid of all the Beeries, you just throw the boomerang at his body, and he has 2 sets of Beeries. So, you know, hit him with the boomerang, throw a Deku Nut, hit him with a boomerang, throw a Deku Nut. Once you've done that, he's going to start moving around, shooting lightning, and essentially trying to body slam you.
I don't know why, but his little laser things remind me of speakers for some reason, so at this point in the fight, I can't really take him seriously.
There's nothing about this boss fight to take seriously. But it's pretty easy because all you have to do is throw a boomerang to stun him, and then use a jump slash with the Deku Stick. I like using the Deku Stick strategy, it's very, very useful. Also, when he sinks into the ground, you can't hit him, but if you want him to get out of the ground quickly, just roll into him and take the hit. You won't actually take damage, and he'll just come right out of the ground.
Goodbye.
I love the way that he dies, it's so gross. He gets cancer, and then splooges everywhere.
Ew. And so ends the dickish boss, that is, Baronade. You know what, I probably should have left in all that footage just so you can see me get knocked around due to the fact that the camera isn't pulled out far enough.
The camera goes through weird things. Way to go, Grizzo. Way to go. Whoa, dude. Rudo is pretty pissed at you. I mean, look at the look she's giving you with her 3rd eye. And her 4th eye. You're not getting out of this alive. This is also the only time someone other than Link is in the blue teleporter. So, just so you know, it's not all in Link's head. They actually are there. And see, this is what I'm talking about. In the dungeon, she couldn't be in water or otherwise she disappeared. But this one, she just dives right in. And everything's all hunky-dory.
Go for that piece of little swim right there.
Here's the catch of getting the Zora Sapphire is that it's actually an engagement ring. Seriously, Link, you can't just go around marrying all the women you come across or dating them. You don't have social links to level up. Settle down with one girl. And besides, you can't marry a fish girl. It doesn't work. You throw flour at it, the whole thing's wet.
Just imagine if there was a Goron princess. Doesn't bear thinking about, really.
Oh, God. No. Oh, God!
Well, that's that, and now we have all 3 of the spiritual stones.
I like the Zora Sapphire because it looks like a snowflake, which could be some foreshadowing.
And you know how you said the Kakiri Emerald looked like, well, something that I forget? Actually, I think it kind of looks a bit like an acorn, which is fitting, really.
Alright, so there we go. All the stones have some symbolism.
We'll see you all next time for the first big twist of the game in Ocarina of Time 3D. See you then.